Hi everybody, Scott here. Today I want to do a bit of a different video. I want to look at something that we call in counselling the therapeutic window, or the window of tolerance. And this illustration can help us to explain what it can look like when we're in what we call the window of tolerance, which is where we're functioning in an optimal way, and then what it can look like and what can lead us to be outside of that window. And it can also be very helpful looking at it from a couple perspective, seeing how a couple can interact with one another when they're in and outside of this therapeutic window. So we're going to look at both of those today. So what these two lines represent essentially is the space where we're living in an optimal way. So we are self-aware, we're aware of other people, we're aware of what we're feeling, and we're monitoring that, we're understanding why we might be feeling what we're feeling, and we're dealing with it. We're also aware of what might be happening for others, and we're able to maintain boundaries and communicate effectively and maintain relationships. So that's what happens in here, and we all have, we could sort of look at it something like that. So nobody has like a straight line. If we had a straight line, we would be dead, essentially. So what happens is, we sort of have the ups and downs of the day. If we looked at this as though happening in one day, and so the day starts, we might start getting stressed. We're at work and we're feeling a bit stressed out. When it starts getting up in here, if we're regulating ourselves appropriately before it steps outside of the therapeutic window, we'll recognize, okay, I'm stressed, or there's something upsetting me, or there's something annoying me, or and we can ask ourselves what's going on, address it however we need to address it to bring us back down into that more optimal zone. Sometimes we might step out of it a little bit. A situation might get the better of us, but we recognize it really quickly, and we take steps to bring us back into that more harmonious place of being. What happens is we can find ourselves triggered outside of this therapeutic window. So there might be just sort of like a natural thing that occurs. Let's say someone has a car accident, or someone rings up at work and is abusive. Something like that might actually kind of trigger an emotional response, and that can send us up into this area, or even down here, and we'll go into both of those. But essentially, if we get triggered up into here, up here is what we would call sort of, there's a number of ways to describe it. It could be active, or it could be an anger response, sort of fight response. It's that more active, angry space where we essentially are like extroverting our upsetness, our upset, and so whatever triggers us up in here, we essentially step outside of our ability to regulate. We step out of the logical brain completely and get lost in our emotional brain that is being flooded with the emotion, and so we stay up here. So we get triggered up here, and then we can stay up here for a period of time. You may find people that you come across in life that actually basically live up in here all the time, very hostile, very, they've got a lot of issues going on underneath that kind of lead them to live up here most of the time, or down here, and I'll go into this area in a moment. So essentially the key to getting back to into the window of tolerance is to recognize as soon as possible, have that awareness, okay, I'm up here, I'm not thinking properly, I'm reacting, there's a hostility, or there's just it's essentially a damaging place to be, both for the self and for other people. And so it's recognizing it as soon as possible and taking time out, breathing, removing oneself from a situation. If it's within the context of relationship, having some space for a little while in order to allow time, in a sense, to allow the body to come back down into this therapeutic space. A lot of people try and resolve things up in here when they're activated, just leading to more and more issues going along and not coming back down in here. So the idea is to recognize it as soon as possible and come back down into this area and from there address the issue. Down here is essentially the opposite. You could look at it as passive. This is where we withdraw. This is where we can... this is more like a depressive space. It could also be a freeze, or the common one, flight. So the fight up here, flight, freeze essentially down below. So we can do both in a situation. We could come up here and be really upset, but for whatever reason being up here can get exhausting, and then we drop. We drop down into withdrawal as a way of trying to recover. This can get exhausting, so down here is where we can withdraw, shut down, get quiet, these sorts of things. And again, in a sense with this one, it's more about allowing that to happen basically for as long as it needs to, in a sense, before coming back up. And recognizing what's going on, and then making decisions depending on the situation to bring oneself back up here. What this often is the anger turned inward. So we have anger about a situation, or we're angry at ourselves. It doesn't get processed. We end up turning that anger towards the self, which leads to a depression. And I don't mean like clinical depression necessarily. It can just, like, this could happen in a day where we're, or this could be a pattern where we're getting angry, and then that anger turns inward. And again, you might know people in your life that spend most of their time down here. They're often in this withdrawal, depressive type state. Essentially, issues that are unresolved have led them to living down here. So what it might require when we're down here for prolonged periods of time is seeking help, essentially breaking the isolation, talking to somebody, and ultimately getting in touch with the original anger in the first place that led to the depression, and what caused the anger, essentially what triggered the anger, to then be able to get back into this therapeutic space. What can happen in a relationship perspective is a couple can do a dance with this. So it's similar to this, but we've got let's say we've got another person that has their own sort of equilibrium. Something can happen in the relationship. Someone says something that is a trigger. Let's say a trigger word. Something that they were told as a child that was very hurtful, and for whatever reason the spouse says this word, and that triggers an anger response. And let's say the way in which the spouse reacts in anger to that word is very similar to the way the other's parent behaved when they were upset, which could trigger them. So this person gets triggered by the word that this person says. This person gets angry. This anger reminds this person of one of their parents' ways of being angry, which was frightening, and so they might head down into a depressive state, like withdrawal, passive, shut down, quiet place. And so we've got one person up here now, and we've got one person down here. We've got one person angry and active, and the other passive and withdrawn. And this can be triggering, sort of an additional trigger, in that perhaps for this person, they had a parent who withdrew affection, withdrew love, and so this makes this person even doubly upset, and then starts to look for this person, essentially, like, one person's leaving the room, the other one's following, that sort of thing, to try to bring them back, because this person wants this person to come back to help them reduce their anxiety, and we've basically got a big mess. And if we use this example, what might happen is when this person withdraws, this person could get angry at that, but then eventually get sad, depressed themselves, and end up down here. And now they're both down here. And what happens in a lot of relationships is eventually they spend some time down in here, reduce the heat from the situation, calm down, let the body recover from the emotional triggering, and then slowly but surely they'll find themselves back up in here, and then they'll probably sit down, talk, make amends, apologize, and go along. Where it can get really problematic is when both are triggered up in here at the same time. Then now we've got a very volatile situation. Both are active, both are triggered, hurt, outside their rational mind, in their emotional brain, and are acting out this place up here. Oftentimes when couples are finding themselves doing all of this, this has its roots in childhood, and they're acting out these woundings in their adult relationship. And it's quite fascinating, although it's sad at the same time, that this place up here, it's like it has its own reality. It has its own script. It has its own buzzwords. It has its own feeling. It has its own memory of the relationship, separate in a sense to the one here. So when the couple's in here and they're harmonious, they're feeling positive, they're feeling loving, and they're remembering the good things. They're calm, they're being productive, and it has its own narrative. It has its own story. But when the couple get triggered up in here, or one's down here, one over here, it can have its own memory and narrative, and the words up here can have its own. Like it will be going back, this area here, the person will be going back to the memories that exist in this emotional memory. And so things that the couple haven't been thinking about for ages will suddenly come up. They'll start talking about what happened at Christmas time, and that sort of narrative will be spoken out up in here. More up in here probably than down here. However, the narrative is more internal. It's like it's going on within the person that's down here. So they're in a sense introverting this narrative, whereas the couple, if they're up here, they'll be extroverting it. And the key essentially is for both to recognize they're up here and to take action to come back down. So that can look like, if only one's recognized it, that person is sort of responsible to take action to help bring things back down. And not that they're necessarily responsible for the other person, but they can remove themselves. They can say, look, we're not talking like this. I'm removing myself. I'm going to go out for half an hour, or I'm going to go read my book, and I'll come back later. Something to create a bit of space to take the heat out of the situation, or allow both to recover from the triggering and come back down here. And once the couple are back down in here, It's very easy to sort of shut the door on this narrative and shut the door on what triggered it in the first place, and then continue along, because it's like we've found ourselves back in the harmonious place, and they want to stay there and enjoy that. But the key to the growth of the relationship essentially is, whilst they're back in this place, is to go look back when they're in their rational mind, where they can think clearly, where they can be objective, where they can be open to looking at the why of the triggering, and from here look at, okay, what happened? What caused this? Where did you go when this happened? What did that situation remind you of? And for this person, it would be, okay, so I noticed when I got angry, you withdrew. What was going on for you? And so now we've got the two adults taking care of, like, essentially like the little children on the inside that are carrying these wounds. And that might require a therapeutic intervention to help unpack all of this, because sometimes it can be just a bit beyond a couple's ability to delve deep enough to get to the roots of what causes this to happen in the first place. However, that's the key. The key is to get back to this window of tolerance, or therapeutic window, and then start looking at the issues that are causing the problems. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you want to inquire about counselling appointments, feel free to send me a message through this channel or email me in the description below. And I hope you've got a lot out of this video, and I'll see you in another video.